The next day, I decided to delve deeper into the lives of those who were at the school when Mary Sue died, hoping to find someone who could shed light on the occult practices and the ritual mentioned in the documents. My investigation led me to a former student, now a local journalist, who had been in the same grade as Mary Sue. Ethan Miller agreed to meet me at a quaint coffee shop. His curiosity piqued by my mention of Mary Sue's case. Ethan was a man in his late 30s, with a sharp gaze that missed little. Over coffee, he recounted his memories of that time, his words painting a picture of a school caught in a web of rumors and fear. There were strange things happening back then, Ethan said, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. Students whispered about secret meetings, rituals. It all seemed like harmless fun until Mary Sue's death. He recalled how the atmosphere at the school had shifted after the incident. It was like a cloud had just descended over the school. Everyone was on edge, scared. And then the school was shut down, just like that. When I mentioned Joanne Simon, Ethan's expression turned solemn. Miss Simon was different after that day. She seemed haunted, scared. People said she knew more than she was letting on. His insights added another layer to the emerging picture. The school wasn't just a place of learning. It had become a breeding ground for something dark and dangerous. As we parted ways, Ethan's parting words stayed with me. There's something evil about that school. Something that didn't leave with its closing. Be careful, Jack. His warning echoed in my mind as I made my way back to my office. The case was drawing me in deeper, and I could feel the edges of the known world blurring into something more sinister. That evening, as I pored over the notes and photographs, a sense of unease crept over me. The photograph of the ritual, the diary entries, the cryptic letter from Joanne. They all pointed to a clandestine world of dark rituals and forbidden practices. As the storm clouds gathered outside my window, mirroring the turmoil in my mind, I realized I needed to delve deeper into the findings from the school. The documents I had discovered in the hidden compartment in the science lab, those that detailed the ritualistic practices, were my main focus. Among them, there were cryptic references and notes that hinted at something significant. But what were they leading to? Was that entity they summoned still lurking in the shadows of the abandoned school? I spread my documents across my desk, the dim light casting long shadows over their aged pages. It was here, amidst these faded sheets filled with esoteric symbols and cryptic writings, that a specific detail caught my attention. Repeated mentions of the school's auditorium stood out. These weren't just passing references. They appeared deliberate, underscoring the auditorium's importance in the ritualistic activities that had taken place. The realization hit me with startling clarity. The auditorium, a place of communal gatherings, might have served a more ominous purpose. It could very well have been the central site where the ritual was performed. The rain began to fall, heavy and relentless, as if trying to wash away the sins of the past. I realized then that the key to solving Mary Sue's death lay in understanding the ritual and its aftermath. Whoever had participated in that ritual held the answers I was seeking. I decided to revisit the school the next day, to walk through its halls once more. I knew I was missing something, a piece of the puzzle still hidden in the shadows. As the night deepened and the storm raged outside, I felt a growing connection to Mary Sue, a girl whose life had been cut short by a series of tragic events. Her voice, though silent for 20 years, was now calling out for justice, and I was determined to answer that call. The case of Mary Sue was more than a mystery. It was a testament to the dangers of delving into the unknown, of summoning forces beyond our control. And as I prepared to face the heart of the darkness, I couldn't shake off the feeling that the storm outside was a mere reflection of the storm that was about to unfold. The morning dawned with the storm having passed, leaving the world washed anew. I drove to the abandoned school, the weight of my impending discoveries pressing heavily on my mind. Today I would confront the heart of this mystery, the ritual that seemed to be the fulcrum upon which everything balanced. My focus was now on the auditorium. There had to be something there, a clue or evidence that I had previously overlooked in this place, shrouded in mystery and darkness. Armed with a flashlight and a resolute spirit, I entered the school. The corridors, still echoing with the whispers of the past, led me to the auditorium. It was here, according to the documents, that the ritual had taken place. The auditorium was cavernous, the stage shrouded in shadows. I could almost feel the remnants of the ritual in the air, a lingering presence that sent shivers down my spine. As I approached the stage, the beam from my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing a series of symbols drawn in a circle on the floor, remnants of the ritual. The symbols were intricate, a series of geometric patterns entwined with ancient runic characters. Each symbol seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. As if they were more than mere drawings, they were imprints of a dark power that had once been summoned here. There were concentric circles with inscriptions in a language I couldn't decipher, likely an ancient script. Among them, a prominent pentagram was etched, its points marked with obscure symbols that suggested elements of nature: earth, air, fire, water, and a fifth element that I guessed represented spirit or ether. In the center of this arcane mosaic lay a more disturbing image, an eye with multiple concentric irises, giving it a hypnotic, almost sentient appearance. It seemed to be the focal point of the entire arrangement, a sentinel overseeing the ritual space. The meticulousness and precision of the symbols indicated that those involved in the ritual were not mere amateurs dabbling in the occult. They had profound knowledge of what they were attempting to summon. I carefully examined the symbols, each one a testament to the dark practices that had been carried out here. It was a summoning circle. But for what purpose? To summon what? Did I really want to know? As I pondered this, a sudden noise echoed through the auditorium, a sound that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread enveloped me. I was not alone. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper in the oppressive silence. There was no answer, but the feeling of being watched intensified. I turned, flashlight sweeping across the room, and that's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the back of the auditorium, barely discernible in the darkness. "Who are you? What do you want?" I demanded, trying to mask the fear in my voice. The figure stepped forward, and in the dim light I recognized the face. It was Joanne Simon, but altered, her eyes hollow, her expression one of deep sorrow and torment. "Joanne, what are you doing here?" I asked, confusion and fear intertwining. She spoke, her voice a mere whisper, but it filled the auditorium with its intensity. I had come back. I had to face it, to end this once and for all. "Face what? End what?" I urged, my flashlight fixed on her. "The ritual. It was a mistake. We summoned something we couldn't control. It's been here ever since, waiting, influencing," she confessed, her voice breaking with emotion. "You mean it's still here? In the school?" The realization hit me like a tidal wave. "Yes," she nodded, her eyes reflecting a haunting fear. "It's bound to this place, to the ritual. It demanded a life. And Mary Sue, she was the price we paid." The horror of the situation washed over me. A malevolent entity had been summoned, bound to the school, demanding a sacrifice which had resulted in Mary Sue's death. But why her? Why Mary Sue? I needed to know. Because of me. Joanne's voice was barely audible. She was my daughter. It wanted her because of me. Because of my bloodline. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a picture of tragic proportions. Joanne's involvement in the occult, the summoning gone wrong, Mary Sue's unwitting sacrifice. It was a tale of sorrow and darkness. We have to end this, Joanne. We have to banish whatever was summoned, I said, determination stealing my resolve. Joanne nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I've been researching, preparing. I think I know how to do it, but it's dangerous. We might not make it. But it was a risk we had to take, for Mary Sue, for the truth, for an end to the darkness that lurked in the shadows of the abandoned school. Together, we began the preparations to confront the entity, to undo the ritual that had started it all. The stage was set for a confrontation that would either free us from the haunting past or consume us in its shadowy depths. As Joanne meticulously laid out the ritual components, I couldn't help but ask, why did it demand a life, Joanne? What was the purpose? She paused, her hand steady despite the weight of the question. In the realm of the occult, summoning an entity is a dangerous and delicate task. The entity we called forth was more powerful, more malevolent than we ever anticipated. It exists in a realm where power is currency, and a life, especially an innocent one like Mary Sue's, holds immense energy and value. I processed her words, a chilling realization settling in. So, Mary Sue's death, it was a sort of payment? Joanne nodded solemnly. Yes, a life for a life. We summoned the entity, and in return it demanded a sacrifice. It's an ancient and dark pact, one we never fully understood until it was too late. In the dim light of the auditorium, Joanne and I began the precarious task of undoing the ritual that had brought so much sorrow. She had brought with her an assortment of items, candles, ancient texts, and various esoteric artifacts. Her hands trembled as she arranged them in a specific pattern around the summoning circle. The ritual we performed all those years ago was meant to summon a guardian, Joanne explained, her voice barely above a whisper. But we were naive, blinded by our quest for knowledge. What we called forth was something far more sinister. As she spoke, she lit the candles, their flickering flames casting eerie shadows on the walls. The symbols on the floor seemed to pulsate with a life of their own, a silent testament to the darkness that had been unleashed in this very room. The entity is bound to the school, but it's also tied to me, Joanne continued. I was the one who led the ritual. It's my bloodline that it's connected to. That's why it demanded Mary Sue. The revelation added a heavy burden to the already somber atmosphere. Joanne's guilt was palpable, a weight she had carried for 2 decades. I watched my heart pounding in my chest as Joanne began to chant in a language I didn't understand. The air grew thicker, the shadows deeper, as if the building itself was responding to her words. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles. Darkness enveloped us, and a sense of dread filled the air. We were not alone. A low growl echoed through the auditorium, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I could feel the presence of the entity, an oppressive force that bore down on us with malevolent intent. Joanne's chants grew louder, more urgent. She was battling against the entity, using every ounce of her knowledge and willpower to banish it back to wherever it had come from. The growl turned into a roar, and the shadows seemed to swirl and coalesce into a formless shape in front of us. It was the entity manifesting itself in response to Joanne's chants. I stood frozen, transfixed by the sight. It was like staring into an abyss, a void of pure malevolence. The entity was a mass of shadows, a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to suck the very light out of the room. Joanne's voice was unwavering, her chant slicing through the darkness. The entity recoiled, as if her words were causing it pain. It was working. She was pushing it back. But then, with a sudden burst of energy, the entity lashed out. A wave of darkness swept towards Joanne, knocking her off her feet. She hit the ground hard, and for a moment, everything went still. "Joanne!" I rushed to her side, fear gripping my heart. She was dazed, but alive. "I'm okay," she gasped. "We can't stop now. We have to finish this." With a renewed sense of urgency, we resumed the ritual. Joanne's chants filled the room, her voice stronger now, fueled by determination and a desperate need for redemption. The entity writhed and howled, its form becoming more unstable with each passing second. And then, with a final piercing chant from Joanne, it let out an ear-splitting scream and dissipated, the shadows evaporating into thin air. The pressure lifted, and the room was suddenly bathed in an almost tangible sense of relief. We had done it. We had banished the entity that had haunted the school and Joanne for so long. Exhausted, we collapsed onto the floor, the gravity of what we had just accomplished sinking in. The curse that had lingered over the school, over Mary Sue's memory, was finally broken. But the journey was far from over. There were still questions that needed answers, truths that needed to be brought to light. Mary Sue's story was not yet complete, and I knew that the next step was to confront the man at the center of this tragedy, Mary Sue's father.